I love to cook at home, and having good kitchenware makes all the difference in the world. Not only does good equipment make prep and cooking easier, but it makes it more enjoyable. This is why I am a huge fan of Made in Cookware. Their wide range of cookware, from pots and pans to knives and flatware and even glassware, are designed to be professional quality for right in your home. I myself have over a dozen pieces from Made In, including pots, pans, pizza steel, knives, and a beer glass. Yeah, beer glassware. They have that all. Take your cooking to the next level by upgrading your cookware by going to unitedwedrink.com/madein. That's MADEIN. Find out why pros like Grant Achatz, Sean Brock, Nancy Silverton, and Eric Repair trust Made In. Go to unitedwedrink.com/madein and upgrade your kitchen and cooking today. The opinions and statements in this podcast do not represent those of the host's employers, co-workers, family, or imaginary friends. Now enjoy the show.
Happy hour? More like amateur hour. Welcome to United We Drink.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the United We Drink podcast right here on unitedwedrink.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Overcast, wherever fine podcasts are found. My name is Mike Urevich, and I had the honor of having the first day of dealing with throwing up children. That was fun. And with me, as always, is someone who has gone through some of that already. It's Kevin Abbott.
When you said that, I imagine you throwing them up in the air and catching them. Is that what you were doing? That's what you're referring to?
And then them vomiting onto us. Yes.
I will say this. There was a time when my child vomited in my mouth. That was unpleasant.
I would assume so.
Yeah, that was very unpleasant.
I'm going to put formula vomit up very high on my list of some of the most repulsive smells in the world. It's fucking gross.
Listen, if there's one thing small children do is emit really bad odors. So that's something that you'll be dealing with that for at least a few more years.
Yeah. But they are asleep. They are fine. They, I guess, just came down with a stomach bug that probably they got from daycare. Yay, daycare. But we are here. We're recording this episode much earlier than we normally do for the release of it. So we're recording this, just so you know, when this comes out. It's prior to Halloween. The World Series hasn't even started, but it will be over by the time this episode comes out. And the Phillies will have won in 5.
Strong prediction. You think they're going to win in 5 when the Astros haven't lost a playoff game yet this year?
Now, who did they play? No, really, who did it was? No, it was
Yankees?
the Mariners and the Yankees.
Yeah.
The Yankees are from New York. They do what every New York team does. They choke when it comes to the big time.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, 27 World Series titles is not very many.
Lately,
27. This is actually
they were following
good,
in the Mets' footsteps.
This is actually a really good idea. This is yet another brilliant idea from our podcast, which is talking about a sports series that will have been over by the time people hear it. This is another brilliant idea. I love this.
Yes. And that is why we are the most brilliant podcast in all of podcasting. And there's an asterisk next to that says just in South Florida.
Do you think that we're actually going to land on the moon like Kennedy says? I mean, do you think it's actually going to go down, or do you think it's a whole bunch of hokum?
No, I've been hearing that they've been talking to what's his name, Stanley Kubrick, about kind of helping them make it look like they got there.
It seems more economical.
It does to me. So, Kevin,
Mike.
we're recording this podcast. That usually means we're having a beverage. What are you having?
Mike, you're going to be either really disappointed in me or really proud of me. I do not have a Barrel of Monks or Odd Breed beer with me tonight. I have two beers. One of them is the Arrogant Bastard Ale, which is a beer that we recently featured on Old Favorite Friday. And the topic we are going to discuss, I thought was a perfect one to discuss with this brand. And I also have a can of the Green Bench Fest beer, another beer that we featured recently and on Old Favorite Friday. But, doing some seasonal beer here, and then the Arrogant Bastard, which I haven't had in a very, very long time up until just recently, and really enjoying it. I love having a beer with bitterness. I'm it warms my heart to know that they still exist.
Yeah. I can't think of the last time that I had that beer, but that was one of the beers once Stone came to South Florida. Like, I was buying bombers of that quite regularly because I enjoyed it so much.
I was having a conversation with Joel about this the other day, and we were talking about like how cool it was with the screen printed bottles that Stone had, and just the ornate branding that was so incredible. And then all the beers, like I think it was like the 10th anniversary beer or something like that, which was a oatmeal chocolate stout, and what it was like when we were first getting those beers in South Florida, or trading people for them all over the country, and how exciting that time period was in our kind of early stages of our craft beer love. And these beers just have a nostalgic aspect to me because of the place and time that I first tried them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I collected their bottles, and kind of like, because of the screen printing, I looked at them as this collector's item. It's not a label on there. This is artistic. This is interesting. This is different. And anytime I had a brand new Stone beer, I washed out the bottle, put it up on my entertainment center with the rest of my Stone bottles. And I remember this blew my mind that we had Stone down here for a little bit of time, and had already started accumulating some of these bottles. Then I was visiting a friend in Arizona and came across a beer that I believed I had before, but the bottle was slightly different. And that was the Cali Belgique, the Belgian IPA. And instead of saying Belgique, it said Belgie. And I was like, wait a minute, this looks different. Is this a different beer? It's the same beer. I guess they had changed the name slightly and changed the branding. And I was just like, I have to have it. I need to take this bottle back with me because I don't have this one. Like, I almost thought of it as like an error card back in trading card days. But yeah, though, and not only were they cool looking bottles, but so many of those beers were so delicious, like smoked porter, like the chocolate oatmeal stout, black IPAs, sublimely self-righteous, and so on. And now it's like you're hard pressed to find any of those beers still in Stone's portfolio anymore.
I'd love to get my hands on a bottle of smoked porter if they still make it.
I don't think that they do.
You don't think they do? That's a shame, because that'd be a perfect beer for Old Favorite Friday.
But you did, yeah. You said what your second beer was. The Fest beer.
Yeah, the Fest beer from Green Bench.
I love that beer. I had
really good.
I had it for the first time last year. Maybe it was the first time that they made it. And I went through 3 to 4 6-packs of it. And this year, I was only able to find one, and I haven't been able to find it since then. And it's such a great beer.
I feel like it's a really nice modern and new world interpretation of the style because it's got a nice, its hopping rate and bitterness are a little bit elevated for what a fest beer is, in my opinion, or what I'm used to. But it works, and it really has a good balance. It's an overall great beer, and I was really impressed when I had it. So,
Well, it's a different style than Marzen.
well, no, I understand
Yeah.
that. No,
And I don't think that Americans are too familiar with fest beer. I think it's only becoming more popular in America over the last few years, where we were just more used to Marzen as the Oktoberfest style of choice.
yeah, but I was referring more to like if you take Weinstefaner's fest beer,
Mhm. Oh,
it's
I
it's
gotcha.
blonde, it's blonde in color, but it doesn't have the same kind of hopping rates
Yeah.
or bitterness of something like the Green Bench one. I feel like very often you get people try to interpret some of these styles and do them their own way, and a lot of times they don't really work. And because those styles are so ingrained, or there's a reason why it tastes the way it does, and I just recently had a Oktoberfest, which a Marzen that was way too roasty and not had no sweetness and was too highly hopped. And I was like, well, they tried to do something different, but I don't think it works. And this was one of the things where I don't think it's wildly different than the traditional style, but I think whatever they did to tweak it was harmonious and really worked within the scaffolding of the beer.
Mhm. I
What are you
am
drinking,
have
Mike?
I'm having a beer from friends of the show, Pat and Maggie, who work for a brewery called Dreaming Creek Brewing in Kentucky. And Maggie was down recently. I'm sorry, Dreaming Creek Brewery. I'm a big person on branding and want to say the correct company name. Um, they brought down some beer. Was Maggie was visiting some family, brought some beers into Copper Point, and I've been wanting to try one of their beers for a long time. I'm glad that they put it in there. It's called Kentucky Common. It is an old historical ale that was made in Kentucky many, many, many years ago. Pre-prohibition, fell out of style and wasn't really made, and they are reviving it, bringing it back, and it's one of their flagship beers. It is a like amber-ish color beer, very malt forward, biscuity, bready. Like it reminds me uh of a red ale, but there's this slightly spicy hop bite to it as well. This is fucking delicious, and it's only 5-ish%, 5.4%. I mean, this is such a great tasting beer. Thanks, Pat and Maggie, for this. I've been wanting to try this beer for a long time because Pat's on Twitter and always so proud of this beer, and rightfully so. Then I have coming up. I'm almost done that can already. I have a can of Civil Society's Oktoberfest, which is a Marzen, that I picked up a 4-pack of from them recently, upping my different Oktoberfest Fest beer Marzens to 8 different ones that I've had this season. That might not be too crazy of a number, but these are like some of my favorite beers, and I've been trying to try as many of them as I can.
Very cool. That's a good thing to strive to.
So, I pointed out, or Kevin kind of alluded to, I kind of alluded to what we wanted to talk about for today's episode. And we've talked a lot about the IP theft in designing of craft beer cans, merch, and all of that, ad nauseum, if you will, on this podcast. But we've never really talked about just branding and design and what what we like and what is the right path to go on branding and naming of your beers and designing labels, logos, things like that. And this I thought could be a really interesting topic because it's something that I'm very passionate about. Kevin definitely has strong feelings towards, but isn't a designer per se. And he is the owner of a brewery who he is a part of creating new brands and the branding that goes along with them all the time. So I figured why not let's talk about some of this. And I think that the first thing when people come up with branding is the name of the brewery. It is the thing that is going to take you and be seen however far you want to be seen. So having a good name that is relevant to your desire for the company and your location could mean all of your business. And there are some breweries out there that have great names. There are breweries out there that have terrible names. And I I think that and there are breweries to me that I think have terrible names that okay, so let me back up a bit.
Where you going, Mike?
What yeah. What constitutes a terrible name? To me, if it's a joke, it's probably going to be a terrible name for a brewery. If you think like this is funny, it would be a great name for my company. It's probably not going to be a great name for a company. But there are other points where I think that a name is bad because you pigeonhole yourself into something. And that is usually geographical names. If you are naming your brewery after like the town that you are in, you're kind of pigeonholing yourself to that location. And if all you want to do is be just a local brew pub or local brewery that you don't really distribute or only distribute a little bit in your area, that's fine. But if you're like a 30-barrel brewery or brew house and you're distributing through multiple counties of your state, maybe even into multiple states, your town name doesn't really mean a whole lot. And that's where I feel like naming your brewery after a town can be a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing you'd want to do is name your company something dumb like Boston Beer Company. That's not going anywhere. There's no way that will ever be popular.
But okay, so two things on that. One, if you're a larger city, that's one thing, but they don't use that as their selling point.
I know. I'm just trying to bust your chops. I was trying to think of. I also thought of Sierra Nevada because it is a regional thing about the Sierra Nevada mountains, which ties you into a geographical location. But I think you have something. I think you have something there for sure. I think I know you're talking about brewery names, but to tie that into some names of beers, I think what happens a lot, especially in our neck of the woods, is everyone wants something to tie into Florida. It's got to be Florida centric. It's got to have something to do with Florida because we want the locals to buy into it and we want the vacationers to come down and say, oh, this is a beer that represents the area that I'm in. And if you do want that beer, no one cares that your beer references Florida if you're selling it in South Carolina, right? So I think that you can pigeonhole yourself. But the one thing I will say, Mike, is that there are too many breweries right now that think they're going to be national brands and way more breweries that should be thinking local. And depending on what your goals are, and I think more people should have a goal of owning a town, owning a city, owning a state, and doing really, really well there and being very comfortable with that.
I would definitely agree with you that there are a lot of breweries with visions of grandeur.
We're starting I've never brewed beer before. We're going to start small. We're going to start on a 30-barrel system, 4 vessel. And then, year or so, we'll go up to a 100-barrel system. That's the loose plans. You hear that a lot.
But the South Florida, the tropical Florida thing. Almost every fucking brewery does it,
Mhm.
and it's just all lost and it's all muddy. And I don't think that enough people give a fuck about that. Um, it just I don't think that that is that big of a selling point. And if you're doing it for tourists, tourists are only a small part of your potential customer base. The people who live here are a bigger part of your customer base. And many of them are probably just numb to the idea of some of the Florida stuff. Like, I mean, I am. But, I mean, even people who go out on boats regularly aren't going out and looking for a beer that screams fucking boat. Now, they're probably buying like Bud Light.
I mean, I know that you're talking about there's a wide range, right? There's definitely people that go out on boats that don't subscribe to like crazy South Florida boat culture. And then there's people who do that and they've got Salt Life all over their truck and they are wearing Tommy Bahama shirts. And there's a
Yes,
lot of people that to subscribe to those in any place you go, whether or
but I'm
not
I'm
it's
saying did they buy your Island Journey Pilsner?
I don't know. Well, first of all, probably not because they have to come to our brewery to buy it because it's not a distributed beer. But I think that it's easy to say that there are too many brands that are trying to do that. I do agree with you, but when you're trying to come up with naming conventions, it's really, really difficult to come up with things that have something to do with your brewery and something to do with the area that you're in, or just sound cool and have a cool concept. That was always my theory when it came to a beer. Ties into who you are, ties into the geographic area, or just sounds fucking cool, right? And it's difficult in this day and age to name anything and brand anything because of the amount of beers that are out there.
Are you saying that you need to have all three of
No,
those?
no,
Okay.
I'm saying
Because
those are the three categories that I would look at.
because
If I'm
I almost think that second one that you said, go fuck off. It does out the window. I don't care about geographic location. Like I never want to name a beer after something, and that's just me.
Mhm.
Because I don't think people care about that. Like, and by people I mean majority. I know that there are people we've talked about this before about the people who want you to put fucking double on every shelf that Publix has. Put Italian food double there, produce section double there. Getting a pub sub. I'm going too long on that joke, but whatever. I just think I don't think that naming beer is as difficult as people make it seem. I think that yeah, people go, there's only so many words and combinations. And yeah, but you can, like, you don't have to use something that is uh, already done. We have Untapped. We have ways of looking that up. We You don't have to use a song title, a band name, a movie title. Like you don't have to use all of that stuff. You can get more in depth, and you can have a lyric that you take and can be something new and unique. A line from a movie, and not even a popular one, a more esoteric one. And I think that you can come up with really great names that sound cool but have nothing to do with your geographic location. Should they fit your brand? Yeah, they probably should. Like I mean, I'm going to be honest. I think that Island Journey doesn't fit you guys at all. But your things like Den of Sins, Parade of Souls, Decadence, like I think those are fucking fantastic names that fit with your guys' brand. Because it's not that I think that you guys are a dark brewery or anything, but I don't know. Barrel of Monks, your initial brands had these kind of old school feelings that maybe sometimes come across as dark, sometimes medieval, and I think that those names were just so strong and so cool. But like
Well,
something tropical and doesn't really come across for you guys.
well, I think first of all, I mean, I appreciate your opinion on that.
It's a fantastic beer, though.
Well, no, but I'm talking. You mentioned earlier about naming your brewery, and the first thing I would recommend to somebody is don't name your brewery Barrel of Fucking Monks, because it pigeonholes you into a place that eventually you're not going to want to go 8 years into your brand, and unfortunately what we did was we niched ourselves, and in our geographical area, which is the only thing that's important to us, still to this day, a 2,500 barrel a year brewery. I do some distributing outside of the state, but 99.9% of all my distribution goes through South Florida. And there is no tie to Belgian beer in South Florida. There is no a real understanding of what Belgian beer. There's not enough people to support my brand to get me to 4 or 5,000 barrels where I want to be. So when we pigeonholed ourselves there, we kind of hurt ourselves, and we put ourselves into a place where we had to use a lot of sometimes dark imagery or using these religious ideas and things of that nature because we were Barrel of Monks Brewing, and it was tough. Now our number one, well, almost number one selling beer, just behind our Wizard White Ale, is a beer called Single in Havana. What does that have to do with monks? What does it have to do with our brand? I don't know, but when it fits with the beer style and what we're doing, blonde ale with guava, and for other people that are seeing that brand for the first time on the shelf, they don't tie our name to Three Fates Triple, and they don't tie us in with any of that. They tie us in with whatever brand they know us most as. I mean, until that beer came out, I was the Wizard guy. I wasn't even Barrel of Monks Brewing. I was the guy that made Wizard, and that's all they understood. If we have to go after non-craft drinkers in order to be successful in our area and with our production, and non-craft drinkers are not thinking about these things in the same way that we are. And non-craft drinkers will easily drink a beer called Island Journey from a brewery called Barrel of Monks Brewing. If that became a core beer for us, I'm not saying it's going to be, but is it concise? Does it fit in the mold? Nope. It doesn't. It doesn't. And we agonize over trying to find names that will work in that vein. But when you talk about like song lyrics and things, I think Odd Breed, our sister brewery, has some of the coolest names of all time. Matt does an amazing job with names like Agronomics of Squander and Scratch the Itch and just really cool concepts and ideas. But I don't know that would work on a Pilsner or a 5% IPA because of the name being too long, or maybe it's not pronounceable for some people. There's just a lot of other things that go into it when you're trying to sell a beer in a tap room, on a shelf at a grocery store, or at a sports bar.
Yeah, I get what you are going at there. I trying to pick where to jump in on that. I still don't think that you're right that general non-craft drinker that you're going after. I know that that's the one that you target, but I still don't think that these are possibly two different targeted ways of working your branding. I still don't think that person that you're going after cares about an islandy, South Florida-y type of branding, because what they drink now isn't branded towards anything like that probably anyway. They just know it because of commercials, in your face marketing, price points, things like that. But where I was also going with that was knowing your brand, creating things around your brand. And you're right. Some of this is probably that I'm looking at might be geared towards someone maybe with smaller, more artisanal type of. I just used a word that Joel loves. Fucking artisanal. Um,
Hey, Joel.
Hi. But I I like the idea of cohesive kind of branding around a family of beer when you're going slightly bigger. I like what both of our breweries are probably going for. We don't want to just be these taproom breweries that only sell majority of our beer through our tap rooms. We're sending most of our beer out the door, and those types of breweries, I like a family in their brands that look like they belong to one another, sound like they belong to one another, and that you can, I guess, billboard. That's the term that's used when you put them all on a shelf by one another. Now, does that all have to do with naming? No, that comes into branding and design and making everything look nice and cohesive, which is a different part of this conversation. But yeah, I get what you're saying, but I'm trying to remember everything that because you hit on a few different things, but I
It's
disagree
complex.
to a certain it is a very complex thing, and probably more so than I even thought when wanting to bring up this topic,
Well,
because imagine starting a brewery from scratch. You're going to come up with a name for your brewery. You're going to come up with a logo. You're going to start coming up with names for your beers and possibly designs for those brands to all kind of hopefully fit underneath the umbrella of your brewery, whether that's what you're going for or not. And I think that is something that there should be some cohesion on. Um, like maybe naming all of your beers after song lyrics is your shtick, and that there's no direct connection between all of them, and that's your connection. Oddly enough, is that there's no connection.
but in that way, you know the connection, but the people drinking your beer casually don't know the connection, and those two things might not fit together. I think that I think there are a couple hurdles in doing that. There are a lot of breweries, very popular, well-known breweries, where they don't necessarily have cohesion and a naming convention across every brand that they have. You've got breweries that have that. A lot of breweries don't. I think the difficulty and this is very interesting because you had like 10 things that you wanted to cover in what I had said and kind of vice versa here.
Yeah.
Let me bring this back around to an important aspect that I think is there. You mentioned the fact that it's kind of bullshit saying that there's not a lot of names out there because there's tons of different things you can do. But within a naming convention, it can be more difficult. If I wanted to just use monk-related Belgian-inspired names, because there have been so many before us, and because there are people doing it now, and because there are more people doing these beers, it becomes more and more difficult to stay within that lane. And you also have the aspect of not being able to see the future of every beer you're going to make. So your brewery is also shifting their focus and what they're doing. And I don't have a marketing company working with me to design everything retroactively, right? We're almost like it's almost like building a house room by room every year or so. And you're dealing with the materials you have on site and available to you instead of saying, I'm going to build this entire facility all together at once. I wish that we had that kind of foresight to know the kind of brands that we were going to do in the future. I wish that we were able to really tie it up with a concept, but not every brewery has that. Not every brewery has concept across. And I think they lean on something you mentioned, design. Design is the thing that pulls everything together and makes everything work. I don't know how many people really have thought, and I'm talking about the people that buy the beer every single day. That might be overkill. Buy the beer regularly. That Single and Havana and the Wizard White Ale are next to each other on a shelf, and they don't have any cohesion as far as naming goes. I really don't think that that's mattered at all to anyone ever. I think that if you sit down and think about it and you go, well, what the hell does Monks have to do with Havana? And what does Single and Havana have to do with Wizards? What does Wizards have to do with Monks? It's the kind of thing I think about, but I think we in the industry can overthink it a little bit.
I do get that, and you're right that the design can bring some of that stuff together because when put side by side, Wizard and Single and Havana look like they belong to the same brewery, because you have really good design work done to show that, and you have a family that you've created. Even your 4-packs of Three Fates looks similar to that, if I'm not mistaken, right?
It's not perfect. We're actually redesigning that sometime in the near future to make it fit back in. But I'll tell you this, Mike, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I am literally designing, my team is designing a new core IPA right now. We literally just sent the first order of cans and the first order of labels to the printer and are designing the 6-pack carrier at this moment. And it doesn't tie into Monks and it doesn't tie into Belgium. It's an American hazy IPA. And when it goes next to those brands on the shelf, it's going to look, there's a flowing line that goes from one to the other. It has brand cohesion as far as the imagery, but it's not going to be satisfying for someone who's looking for cohesion across the naming convention. And I also want to mention that it is a shame that Joel is not on this podcast because he hated Island Journey. He despised that name. I had almost a revolt in the brewery when we named that beer that. I thought some people were going to walk out, and he would really enjoy the opportunity to tear into me about the fact that myself and the rest of the partners ended up going with that name. So I feel like you're his voice right now.
Well, I know that we can think very similarly sometimes. So I'm glad that I can play that role, I guess, without even realizing it. But yeah, I mean, that was a great beer. The liquid, I know some people fucking hate that word referring to beer.
Too, yeah.
Liquid. Liquid was fucking fantastic. Yeah, I didn't really care for that name. It was just like, really? Okay. But so let's there's always exceptions to a lot of this. That there's ones that probably the ones who have been around longer get a little bit more, like they have more length on the rope to be able to deal with these things that make no sense to me for branding, for design. Russian River is one of them. Because they're a geographical location, the Russian River area of wine country in California, and their labels for the most part are pretty bad, and they use Comic Sans in some of their labels, but they've been around so long, like it's almost become that's kind of their thing, is that some of these labels are not that great looking, but you know that the beer inside of them are fucking fantastic and world class. And you were right with Sierra Nevada. But it's just, to me, if someone were to open up a brewery called Boca Raton Brewing Company with a 50-barrel brew house and be like, we're going to be the brewery of the Southeast, no one in Fort Myers is going to give a shit about a brewery named Boca Raton Brewing, let alone in Valdosta, Georgia.
I I couldn't agree with you more when it comes to that, but there are exceptions to that as well,
Yes,
because if there's
but I
enough
do
money
think
behind.
that it is some of those older legacy brands.
But I'm telling you, it could happen tomorrow. If you've got enough money behind the project, you've got good minds involved with it, you've got great branding, and you can fund yourself for a long period of time and do the right kind of advertising, you can make anything work. We have conversations, and I wish we could make this episode a three-parter. We could talk about brewery names, we could talk about beer names, we could talk about the imagery when it comes to packaging. They're all so important. I have, to the lack of a better term, knockdown, drag out fights over names every single time we name something, because I have a partner who rightfully says we need simple to say, easy to order, easily relatable beer names that paint a picture, that tell a story. And I go, well, that's not easy. A lot those names, a lot of those have been taken, right? But he's not wrong. That's what naming brands, not just outside of the, don't just think about beer, think about everything else that's going on in every other vocation. You want simple to say, easy to understand names, and often at times if you can have them tell a story, that's going to be a benefit to you. But then but I'll then point out, who knows what High is, right? High is a
Touche.
incredibly popular IPA in Florida, but also now nationally, an incredible beer by Cigar City Brewing Company. And I'm from Michigan. I didn't know how to pronounce High until I drank my first High. I saw billboards with it up, but I didn't know what the hell it was. But now it's Coca-Cola. It's just a brand name. It doesn't mean the game of High. It means that IPA. And if you have enough behind it and you have a little bit of luck, you can turn any name, whether it's a brewery name or a brand name, into just the thing that it is. And you also have the fact that people refer to some of these names differently than what they actually are. No one calls our single in Havana single in Havana. They call it Havana. That's what they call the beer. Our brewery is now being referred to by many people. Oh, I love Barrel. Barrel? What does that even mean? But that's how they refer to the brewery, because they don't want to say Barrel of Monks. Everyone likes to abbreviate everything. So the best the best laid plans of mice and men of what you want to put out there, sometimes you don't get that back.
I want to go back to something you said, because I feel like it, at least in my mind, doesn't work. You talk about one of your partners saying like names need to be easy to pronounce, and paint a picture. And those things do not mean the same and do not come close to being together in my mind. And that comes across as marketing jargon to me, because it sounds like something that some marketing firm guy would be like, yes, it is spa. It paints the picture of elegance, and like that's fucking bullshit to me. Like, how does something so simple, like, and I know you can say like minimalist painting and blah, 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 but something so simple doesn't necessarily paint some picture and tell a story to me. Like, I'm not saying that we need to have a long ass fucking name to tell a story. Like, you have other ways of telling stories through your beer, and that, like, through the design work, and if you want to put a little like whatever blurb on your can. But I feel like making something simple and telling a story do not go together to me.
They can. I'm not saying it's easy, but they absolutely can. A short 1 or 2 word name of a beer can absolutely put you in a time and place and tell you. We're using these examples about South Florida and beach culture and things like that. If you name your beer Sandbar, right? There's a beer called Sandbar. People that know what a Sandbar is know exactly what that beer is going to be. They know that they're looking for something that's light, refreshing, easy to drink on the beach, right? It paints a picture. It's simple. Everyone knows what those two words are. And if you're in Florida, you know what a Sandbar is. Whether you like it or not, as a person, is a little bit immaterial. Whether you like that as a branding person, that's a personal thing. But it does do those things that some people are looking for. They're not easy. They can sometimes be overused. I completely agree with that. But saying that there's no validity in that, I think that's wrong. I think there is validity to it. It's just whether or not you want to go down that road with your brands and the way you want to project your. If you want to be the beach beer, well, then you should try to pigeonhole yourself into that and be a beach beer if that's what you're going for. It might not be the best for your long-term future, but it's definitely a road to go down. It's no less silly than being the Belgian brewery, in my opinion.
Well, I see Sandbar. Yes, you're going to create an image in your head, but I don't see how that tells a story. To me, stories are more complicated than a word. Like, even short stories are longer than a few words.
Okay, well, we're getting a little bit into semantics then. When I
No,
say
that's just
when
what
I
I
say
think.
when I say tell a story, I meant paint a picture.
And that is what you said initially too. But I feel like they go hand in hand, and you're not creating a painting through just one brushstroke. You're not telling a story with one or two words. And I mean, I'm not trying to say that simple beer naming conventions don't work and can't work. They absolutely are fine. I'm just saying that, to me, that argument of let's be simple but tell a story don't work in my mind. Um, unless you are giving me more, such as design and an actual story that goes along with it, like a blog article that tells the story about it.
But no one sees the blog article. That is the thing I always come back to every time we're talking about these beers, when we're trying to talk about them and say, well, how do we get the word out there? We don't. There is no way to get the word out to enough people to affect their drinking habits at your local sports bar and at your local grocery store shelf, because those people that are buying that beer are not on your email list. They're just not. Now, if you are a smaller brewery, or I hope to God, if you're listening to this and you do 2,500 barrels and you mostly sell in your tap room, congratulations. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I wish I was in that position. And you can tell that story about who you are to people, let alone your brands. That's great. But the vast majority of people that drink our beer don't even know the name of the brewery that they're drinking the beer from. If you go to a local tap house, we're lucky if Barrel of Monks and the Wizard White Ale are all spelled out there on the menu. We might be lucky to get Wizard or Wizard Wit or Monks Brewing, or sometimes we're listed as other breweries making our beer and vice versa. So it's just, you have to sell something to...
Kevin, I bought your Monk in the trunk.
Exactly. I get that so often.
We told actually, that story.
Yeah, so often. But it's when my partner is talking about this, he is talking about the end user who has no interest in being a craft beer aficionado, who's never going to go to our website, who's never going to look into the fact that we're right down the street. They're just going to look on the shelf and go, yeah, I like that beer. I like the way the color of it. I like it, the way it makes me feel. I like the way it tastes. And that's all they're going to want. In an ideal situation, I think you would have those things, but it's not easy. and it's maybe a little too simplistic in your mind, and I respect that, but I don't think having a goal on that is just jargon or just bullshit.
I'm gonna respectfully disagree with you on that. I just yeah, I I don't like I said, I don't think that going in that direction with simplicity is a wrong thing to do. It works fine for a lot of companies, but I I don't think that just by a name itself, it a simple name can necessarily paint a picture, tell a story just by itself. That's just the way I am. And I mean, people feel free to fucking flame me for this if you think that I'm wrong, but that's it's just the way that I look at it.
But then how I don't disagree with you that for the most part it's hard to do that, but you can't tell the story to the end user, and the user will never get your story. So what is your goal there?
The story. Who is like? When's the last time that you bought something for a story? Like because like
So your thing is you don't need to tell a story
I don't think that you.
or paint a picture.
I don't think that
respect
you
that
need it
too.
to grab a person's attention.
Oh,
Like
oh,
I think that the story is something more in depth that people who really want to know about it are going to search out for it.
okay. We're much more aligned in this than than I realized. I don't think every beer needs to tell a story. I don't think every beer needs to paint a picture. I think sometimes a beer can just have a cool name for the sake of a cool name. I think
I am
sometimes
with you on that. Yes.
I think sometimes you can have High Life and you can have Maduro Brown from Cigar City. And a lot of people that drink Maduro Brown have no idea that a Maduro is related to a cigar wrapper or size or something. This shows how much knowledge I have about cigars. And they have no idea that High Life is a sport. But they drink the hell out of it and they enjoy it anyway. They've become brands in and of themselves. I do not think that that is a necessity for naming anything in any way, shape, or form. Good beer, satisfactory marketing, and a little bit of luck can make anything incredibly popular. You, you can definitely run into that. I think the idea of trying and looking at something like that, I don't think there's no merit to it. My favorite beers are beers that have names that I personally resonate with, but it's just hard to always come up with them. You and I, Mike, we worked at the same brewery where we would literally stand around a bright tank. I'd like to say 3 or 4 weeks into a beer's life cycle, but as fast as we turned beers over, it was probably more like 10 days after the beer was brewed. And we'd be sitting there going, all right, well, what the hell are we calling this thing? The beer's done. It's in the tank. It's carbonated. It's coming out in 2 days. And we're trying to come up with a name for the thing. That's a really, really hard position for people to be in. And then all of a sudden you're just jankily grabbing stuff and going, well, what if we call it this? What if we call it this? We can't workshop it. We can't always come up with the best names. Sometimes we're just throwing stuff at the wall.
You can workshop it if you do it with enough time.
Yes, yes,
yeah,
but that doesn't happen all the time.
That was an argument that I had there. And honestly, I see a lot of breweries have this fucking issue is like I said, we know what we're going to brew, hopefully at least a week ahead of time. We should be able to come up with a name starting then. And I remember our former boss going, well, I don't really feel like I can name a beer until I know what it tastes like. Isn't that what you're writing the recipe for? Is to kind of know what it's going to taste like? And like, this is not how businesses work. This is not how if you're aspiring to be a brewery that makes 5 to 10,000 barrels a year, this is not how you do it. You have to come up with this stuff ahead of time so you can order the materials that you need for the packaging on it. And You can't wait until it's in a fucking bright tank. But if you want to be a 1,000 barrel or under brewery, sure, you can probably afford to do that a bit more. But I was always so just like frustrated with like, how about this name? How about, well, I don't know yet. I haven't tasted it yet. We're making a fucking imperial stout. What the fuck do you need to taste it for? Like, let's come up with a name.
I was just as frustrated as you, and I just laid out my 2023 calendar for the entire year, every specialty beer we're brewing, when it's coming out, the date it's supposed to hit distribution, the date it's supposed to hit sales in the tap room. And we have 2 or 3 beers that need to be conceived of and named, and I'm trying to get that done before the end of November because I need to work like that in advance. But I was referring to a situation that we were both in and that frustrated me as well. And that's the reason I work the way that I do now. But in my current situation, and I know we've talked way too much about naming beers, but I've got about 9 people on an email thread. Hey guys, new beers coming out. This is what we're looking to do. This is the partners. This is the brewers, a taproom manager, sales rep, basically everyone who is a salaried employee at the brewery that has a hand in selling or representing this brand. And with 9 people on that list, I rarely get 3 people that like a single name and that can go with it. It is so difficult to get new names and new ideas because none of us are marketers. None of us are branders. We are good at our jobs, and we do come up. We hit some home runs sometimes. I absolutely think we do, but it's. I find it difficult. Maybe I'm a simplistic person, but I find it extremely difficult to come up with a concept that the majority of people can latch onto and push it forward. It's like pulling teeth every single time we have to do it. It's my least favorite part of the job.
Cut that list short. Like, do 9 people need to be involved in coming up with that?
I put that out there because I'm saying I'm trying to workshop this. I'm trying to get different opinions of throughout. Okay, these are the 2 names I came up with. These are the 2 names we had. Okay, because these are the top 5. Top 4, top 3. What do you all think about this? Well, I like this one better. I like this one better. I'm trying to cast a wide net to get information out there because if I cast a much smaller net, we're not going to have as many ideas.
I can get that, but I could tell by the way you were saying it, this sounds like a very fucking frustrating like situation. And I gotta
Extremely.
imagine that other people in that thread feel the same way, that like, why the fuck are we all going through this? Like, does there need to be 9 people involved in it?
What I'm telling you is that if there's not 9 people involved in it, we're not going to have very many options, and we're going to have the same. We're not. It's not going to be. It'll be easier to pick the name, but we're not going to necessarily have a better name. I think if you have one person in charge of that and they have autonomy and they can go, hey, this is what the direction we're going in. If it's the owner, the singular owner of a brewery, whether it's good or bad, there's a streamlined aspect to it that can be really good. But maybe we just don't have a single person involved in our brewery that's really skilled at putting something like this together. And maybe that's our problem. We used to have a company that helped us come up with names. They were a marketing company that helped us brand and do all our social media and stuff. And they came up with some pretty good ones. They came up with some terrible. We gave them concepts and they brought up 5 ideas and all of them we thought were terrible as well. So I'm interested. What do you do at Copper Point? What do you suggest in that situation?
I mean, to be honest, like I sometimes have frustrating issues like this too. I mean, I look at things and like to be a bit more vague and esoteric with my naming, and where sometimes my boss wants to be all Florida, like, or just use like memes sometimes, and I'm just like, I don't know on that. Um, I'm gonna be honest, like I don't have as much say as I maybe my opinions come across as, but like because at the end of the day, I am an employee of someone else. But I've had frustrating moments. Like I look like the most. I, I'll use an example, and if this is out of line for me, I don't care. But we had new hazy come out a couple weeks ago, more than a couple weeks ago by the time that this episode drops, called Weedline. And that was not the first name. And the name that my boss wanted to use, I really didn't like. And it was like this meme type of fucking thing, and just looking it up, like I had no idea what it was when he brought it to me, and I'm not going to say it, but like I was looking it up and coming across like all these fucking things, and it kind of has a double meaning, and it's like and I don't like the secondary meaning that's coming across to it, and like the last thing that I want is someone to like Google the name of this and then come across that, and I was just like, nah, I don't really like this. And he's like, well, what can you come up with? And like because I was already just hating this, I couldn't like I tried, but I couldn't come up with something good that like got across the meaning that he liked while also being kind of cool. To be honest, I didn't even know what the fuck weed line meant. And he explained it to me as it's like a fishing thing where like the bait fish hang out in like the seaweed line across the fucking ocean, and then the big fish end up following the small fish in there. So you want to go casting to that because that's usually where the big fish are at. Um, but like then I was like, I wasn't super thrilled about that because he was like anyone who lives in Florida and has been on a boat knows what a weed line is. I was like, I've lived in Florida for over 20 years. I've been on boats. I don't know what a weed line is.
No
And
fucking
you're
clue.
looking at me like you've never heard of this either.
Nope.
So I'm glad that I'm not. So I wasn't super thrilled by this, but I I was like, I feel like I can work with this a little bit more. Because I, I I felt like we could make this a kind of dank like beer, and it can go with the weed part of that name. We were also using Idaho 7 in the beer, so I turned the L in weed line into a upside down 7 in the name. So a small little thing that most people probably aren't going to catch, but I did. I appreciated it. I liked it. And I ended up coming up with a design that I really liked off of it. It wasn't a name that I necessarily liked, but by the time that I got my juices going on design, it's a name that I kind of dug. And I like the label. I'm happy with how the label came out. Um, I can't believe I just told the whole fucking story of a start to finish how I made a label, but I deal with these issues too, and you're right that unless there's one person completely by themselves, frustration can be had. Cutting it down, like to me, it's really just two people at my works, maybe 3 to 4 here. Like we might get some of the seller guys involved, or another investor or whatnot, but like 9 just sounds intense. And like I heard you say that, and I was like, oh my God, if I had Slack messages or emails between 9 people going on throwing out names, I'd probably have a fucking aneurysm.
So there's one thing that I was thinking about while we've really through the
While
entire
I said all
conversation.
that shit.
Well, I was thinking about I actually I don't even know what you said. I checked out there for a second. But one of the
Thank
things I've
you.
been thinking about, and I mentioned my partner that you did not agree with in a lot of ways about the ways to name beers and the philosophy about this. But there's something else that I take away from that person, which I think is very, very valuable, because I do spend an inordinate amount of time just agonizing over some of these decisions and thinking about them just till my brain explodes. And it's not just beer names, but so many times he will look at me and say, Kevin, is this going to sell one more beer if we name it this or do this? If we buy this thing versus this thing, is it really going to sell one more beer? Is it really matter that much? Is this the hill to die on? And he'll come up with ideas, concepts for beer names, and really go to bat for them because he thinks that they're the right thing. And then at the end of the day, he's like, if no one else is into it, I don't care, because at the end of the day, it's a beer name. If the beer is good, if people try it, if we find the right outlet for it, if we sell it the right way, it'll be successful, whether it's a great name or a shitty name. And there are shitty name beers out there that do extremely well.
Yeah.
And I try to take that perspective as often as I can. Is this really the thing that I'm going to stake in? Oh no, this beer has to be called this, and it's not going to be successful unless it's called this. No, because that's bullshit. That's not the way it works. There's not this clear dividing line between success and failure, and this name is going to make it this, and this name's going to make it this. And to bring it back to the original part of the conversation, talking about my brewery and my brands, whether or not that Pilsner was called Island Journey or something else, I don't think it would have sold one more can. I should say one more 4-pack. One more 4-pack in the tap room had it been called something else. Because that's just not the way it works in our small microcosm at our tap room.
Hey, I don't think that that's necessarily true. And I have no way of proving that because
You can't run the experiment again.
yeah.
It's really the way it is. But that's good, Mike, because we should end this episode with you and I disagreeing, because this has been the most contentious episode I have ever partaken in all of our podcasting for years and years and years. I don't think we've ever argued this much or been in this much disagreement, which I believe is good. I think controversy is good for ratings, as they say.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. So you want to leave it at that?
I mean, dude, I'll talk for another hour with you. You're my best bud. I'll
No,
talk about beer forever.
I think we're well over an hour. I mean, hey, maybe we continue this on a separate episode. Listen, I bet Joel is listening to this and stewing and once in.
He wishes that he could be here to pile on and beat me up. I think what's actually going to happen is that we are going to get into an actual fist fight. You're going to best me because you're bigger than me, and the next episode of United We Drink will just be you, and then we'll know who won.
So I'm going to turn this into the Bill Burr podcast and just talking to myself for an hour.
And you'll start the episode. You'll say Mike makes right. I kicked Kevin's ass, and therefore I was correct on every single thing I was talking about. That guy's a moron, and you'll go on with your life.
That'll put asses in seats. All right. So I think that's I like kind of ending on a disagreement. No one really gets the last word per se. So yeah, we'll do that. Let's head into doing some last calls. And this is the point in the show, if you're unfamiliar with, where we give each other an unspecific amount of time to talk about whatever it is that we want, beer related or not, unopposed, unobjected, uninterrupted. So with that, Kevin, take it away.
When you live in South Florida and you want to carve a pumpkin, it really sucks. Because where I'm from in Michigan, growing up and wanting to share carving pumpkins with my child, you could carve a pumpkin a couple weeks before Halloween. You put it out on your doorstep. You put it in your little display of your Halloween, whatchamacallits, and it will be there for weeks on end. It won't rot. It won't fall apart. It won't be eaten by bugs. It'll just be there. It'll be part of your Halloween decoration. In South Florida, when you start carving pumpkins, which we started doing last year as a tradition as Jad got old enough, they rot in like 6 hours. You put a pumpkin out, it's just devoured by insects and starts to fall apart almost immediately. And I think that is unfair and that is wrong. And it is destroying my festive nature around Halloween. Next year, we are carving. I remember watching TV shows growing up, and they're like, it's Halloween, and they're carving pumpkins on Halloween. That's not the way you're supposed to do it. You carve pumpkin leading up to Halloween and enjoy the carved pumpkin on Halloween. You don't carve them on Halloween night. No, next year I'm carving the pumpkin while Jad is walking around and getting candy. It is the only way that we will get a chance to enjoy it on Halloween. And that's all I have to say about that.
I agree with a lot of what you just said. Uh, my last call is actually going to be in agreement with Kevin's last call from the last episode. I just finished watching She-Hulk a couple days ago. I love that show. I think that it is one of my favorite of the Marvel TV shows that I've watched. I haven't watched them all. I've picked and choose what I want. I read articles recently about how you need to make your own Marvel Cinematic Universe. You don't have to get involved into every single aspect of it. You don't have to watch every show. You don't have to watch every movie. Watch the ones that you want and enjoy yourself with them. And I have definitely done that. Like I loved WandaVision and Loki and Moon Knight. And She-Hulk's going right up there with them. I love all of the breaking of the fourth wall. I thought that Daredevil was incredible, and the little shtick back and forth between them was great banter, and I'm looking forward to his show coming back. And I'm fucking long. It was 18 episodes they're gonna do of Daredevil coming back. Yeah, it's a long one. I well acted, well written, like so well written. To be able to put all of that together is I feel like the sidebars and the breaking of the fourth wall and all of that takes so much attention to detail to write, like that is comparable to like really weird storylines that involve like time travel and fantasy stuff. Like the writing on that was, I think, great, and the acting was great. I enjoyed the shit out of that show. So if you don't like that show, I don't fucking know what's wrong with you. But yeah, great show.
At the end of the day, Mike, you and I agree on more things than we don't.
I still haven't watched Love and Thunder, so we'll see by that.
If you like that movie, then we're not friends anymore.
Kevin, anything you want to plug?
So this episode is coming out, 7 weeks from now? This episode's coming out in 2024, so I want to promote our anniversary then. It's in March. Please come by and enjoy yourself.
Aha.
No, it's not great. What do you expect from me? It's the end of the episode. We argued the entire time, and I want to go to sleep.
As do I. If you want to follow me, you can find me at Mike Loves Beer on Twitter and Instagram. If you follow me on Instagram, I really appreciate it. Like some of my stuff, I'm really pleased with a lot of the photos that I've been putting up there recently. So yeah, shameless plug. If you want to follow the show, you can follow us at United We Drink on Twitter, at United We Drink Pod on Instagram. We're on all of the podcasting services that you would typically find podcasts. So go to that one that you love so much if you haven't already, and subscribe to the show. If you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating, leave us a review. It really helps out the show and the algorithm over there. Algorithms, they're fucking dumb. But if you want to support the show financially by throwing us a little change, that's really awesome. You can do that in a couple different ways. You can go to our website, unitedwedrink.com, and go to the brands that we love. If you click on any of those links there and buy something from them, we get a little kickback from them, whether that be someone like Made in Cookware, Liquid Death. We have Flavier, which does spirits and spirit advent calendars. Go get your advent calendar and enjoy the festivities. We fucking do. We've been doing it for a few years now. We love our whiskey advent calendars here in the Urevich household. And or you can go over to our web store, unitedwedrink.com/store, and buy a t-shirt, button, sticker, tote bag. My mom has a tote bag. Hi, Mom. She bought a United We Drink tote bag, and it's kind of fun to see her walking around with a tote bag that has our logo on it. So you can do that if you'd like, and all of that money goes toward just paying for our hosting fees, and that's all we do. We don't make fucking money from this, but every purchase is appreciated, and we appreciate you. We'll be back in a couple weeks for another new episode. In the meantime, take care, everyone. Hope you had a great Halloween, and go Phils. Hopefully world fucking champs by this point. Cheers.
Yeah, the second fair from Summerland when some the sky goes by. Do you believe me?